Deep in a silent library, a secret could save a world. Ilara, a young scholar of Ethelgard, moved through the towering shelves of ancient knowledge, her heart beating a quiet rhythm of rebellion. The world's magic was fading, a slow dimming that no one else seemed to notice or dare to question. But Ilara had to know why. Tonight, she would risk everything, even exile, to uncover the truth hidden within the library's most forbidden texts, the legendary dragon lore scrolls. By the end of this journey, you will discover a complete and soothing tale of how one person's quiet courage can restore an entire world's lost harmony. What forgotten power sleeps within those dragon runes, and what shadow seeks to extinguish it forever? I would love to know, as you settle in, where you are listening from, and what the local time is for you right now. What does the idea of hidden, ancient knowledge stir within you? The parchment felt alive beneath her fingertips, a faint warmth seeping into her skin as she carefully unrolled it. In the solitary candlelight, the dragon runes began to shimmer, their intricate lines pulsing with a soft, golden glow. It was as if they were breathing, awakening from a long slumber just for her. Then the air itself seemed to shift, the runes brightening until they projected a ghostly map that hovered just above the scroll. It was a landscape of shimmering lines and symbols, and at its very center pulsed a single, brilliant point of light, the first dragon Heartstone. A sudden, heavy footstep echoed from the corridor just beyond the shelf, jolting her from her wonder. The head librarian was making his rounds. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she frantically rolled the scroll, the ethereal map flickering and dying just as the footsteps paused nearby. She held her breath, pressed into the shadows, certain the frantic beat of her heart was loud enough to give her away. The footsteps eventually resumed, fading down the adjacent aisle. In that moment of sheer terror, a fierce clarity settled over her. She would trust the magic that had called to her. Closing her eyes, she burned the map's key features into her mind: the winding river, the triple-peaked mountain, the ancient lightning-struck oak. She was going to find the Heartstone, no matter the cost. A faint, tingling warmth still clung to her hands, a magical resonance left by the scroll. It was a beacon, she realized with a chill, one that others, those who hunted such power, might also be able to sense. With the path forward now seared into her memory, she knew her first journey must begin at the edge of the Whispering Woods. The woods swallowed the path behind her the moment she stepped inside. A low, rustling murmur seemed to emanate from the gnarled trees, a chorus of half-heard words that twisted on the damp air. Mist coiled around her ankles, thick and cold, and the deeper she walked, the more the scroll's map felt like a distant dream. The triple-peaked mountain was nowhere in sight, and the familiar landmarks of her world had vanished. Here, the very ground seemed to shift, roots subtly twisting to block one way, while a patch of glowing moss illuminated another. It was not a passive forest, but a living, breathing entity, testing her resolve. The protective mist began to thicken into a dense, gray wall, muffling the sound of her own footsteps and distorting the shapes of the trees into looming, skeletal figures. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against the silence, a fear that she was walking in circles, destined to become another forgotten soul claimed by the woods. Then, a soft, blue light pulsed in the periphery of her vision. A luminous moth spirit, its wings like shards of captured moonlight, floated gently before her. It did not speak, but its presence felt like a calm question. Would she trust the forest, or would she trust her fear? Taking a shaky breath, Alara made her choice. She let go of her desperate need to control her path, and simply followed the moth's gentle, weaving flight. The mist seemed to part for its light, and the whispering of the trees softened from a threat into a guide. As she walked, illusions flickered at the edge of her sight, visions of the head librarian's disapproving frown and the echoing silence of an empty library, all meant to sow doubt about her quest. But she pressed on, her focus on that single point of blue light, her intention pure, her heart fixed on restoration, not power. The moth led her into a sudden, silent clearing where the mist dissolved. Before her stood a weathered stone archway, ancient and covered in flowering vines that pulsed with the same soft, inviting light as the spirit that had guided her. The stone archway stood silent and patient beneath the flowering vines. Alara reached out, her fingers carefully pushing aside the soft, glowing tendrils to reveal the ancient stone beneath. Intricate carvings of dragons in majestic flight were unveiled, their forms worn smooth by countless seasons. Compelled by an instinct she did not fully understand, she gently placed her palm flat against the central keystone. A deep, resonant hum immediately filled the clearing, a single, pure note that seemed to vibrate up from the very core of the world. The ground trembled softly beneath her feet, not with violence, but with a sense of awakening. At the base of the arch, a section of earth and root shifted aside without a sound, revealing a small, hidden compartment. Nestled within was a shard of crystal, no larger than her thumb, that glowed with a gentle inner light. As she carefully lifted the crystal, its warmth spreading through her hand, a new presence made itself known. A great forest guardian emerged from the tree line, a stag of magnificent stature whose antlers were not of bone, but of gleaming, living crystal. It lowered its head, the points of its crown catching the strange light of the clearing, and blocked the path behind her. Its dark eyes held no malice, only a deep, territorial caution. Alara's breath caught. She could not fight such a being, and flight felt like a disrespectful, foolish impulse. Instead, she slowly, deliberately, raised her open hand that held the crystal shard. She offered it not as a challenge, but as a testament, a silent plea to see the pure magic she carried and understand her purpose was one of healing. The guardian took a step closer, its crystalline antlers humming in sympathetic resonance with the shard. It sniffed the air around her offering, and the tension in its powerful frame seemed to dissolve. To her awe, the great creature dipped its head in a deep, formal bow, a clear gesture of acknowledgement and permission granted. The immediate danger had passed, but a new unease prickled at the edges of her awareness. The archway's resonant hum had been a beacon, a ripple in the quiet fabric of the world, and she felt certain that something or someone far away had just taken notice. Slipping the crystal shard safely into her pouch, she felt a new and undeniable pull, a magnetic draw that turned her gaze toward the distant, snow-capped peaks of the northern mountains. The next piece of the puzzle was waiting. The crystal shard in her pouch began to radiate a steady, comforting warmth as she climbed into the foothills. It was a gentle heat that pulsed in time with her own heartbeat, a quiet companion against the growing chill. When she cupped it in her hands to ward off the cold, it responded with more than just warmth. Faint, shimmering images flickered to life above its surface, visions of dragon hatchlings tumbling playfully through sun-drenched skies, their joyful calls silent echoes in her mind. They felt like encouragement, a reminder of the vibrant life she was fighting to restore. This subtle magic began to reshape her journey in unexpected ways. The shard's warmth seemed to form an invisible barrier against the biting wind, and the mountain wildlife, usually so skittish, regarded her with a calm, curious stillness. A family of mountain goats simply watched her pass, their dark eyes reflecting no fear, only a placid acceptance of her presence. But the mountains themselves held a fiercer challenge. A storm gathered with unnatural speed, the sky darkening from a serene blue to a churning, leaden gray in mere moments. Thick, heavy snow began to fall, not in gentle flakes, but in a blinding, horizontal sheet that sought to erase the world. This was no ordinary squall. The air crackled with a hostile energy, a magic that felt intentional, designed to obscure and isolate. Her fingers grew numb, and the path vanished completely beneath a blanket of white. To stop was to freeze. Thinking quickly, Alara pressed the crystal shard against a towering snowdrift, nestled against a cliff face. Focusing all her will on its comforting heat, she directed the energy outward. A soft, golden light emanated from the shard, and the compacted snow before her began to melt and steam, retreating to form a small, hollowed-out cave just large enough for her to crawl inside. She collapsed into the temporary refuge, the howl of the wind now muffled to a low, menacing growl. The unnatural ferocity of the storm left no doubt. Someone, or something, was actively working against her. Someone who also sought the Heartstones and would use the mountain's own power to stop her. Wrapped in the shard's gentle glow, exhaustion finally pulled her into a deep sleep. Her dreams were no longer her own. She found herself standing in a vast, subterranean cavern, where the very air thrummed with a slow, powerful rhythm. There, curled around a pillar of obsidian, was a dragon of immense size, its scales the color of cooled embers. It slept, but its mind reached out to hers, a single, resonant thought echoing in the silence. It was a call, not of distress, but of patient, ancient waiting. The Heartstone was here, and the dragon was its eternal guardian. Pyroth, the name echoed through her dream, not as a sound, but as a foundational truth. The great dragon uncoiled his thoughts around her, and she was swept into a vision of a world alive with shared magic. Humans did not cower from the great worms. They stood beside them, architects and artists, weaving light and song into the very stones of their cities. A young woman offered a freshly forged sword to a bronze-scaled dragon, who breathed a gentle, shaping fire upon the metal, imbuing it with a soft, permanent glow. A dragonette, no larger than a cat, chirped happily from the shoulder of a laughing child, its tiny claws carefully sheathed. It was a symphony of cooperation, a time when the air itself hummed with a magic so abundant it felt like a second sun. This was the harmony she was fighting for, a memory of what the world had lost. The vision shifted, focusing on this very mountain, showing her the secret. A waterfall, defying all nature, cascading upward into the sky to veil a cavern entrance from prying eyes. Then the dream faded, and Pyroth's final thought was a quiet ember in her mind. Guard the heart. She awoke with a gasp. The image of the impossible waterfall seared behind her eyes, but her body felt hollowed out, as if the dream had siphoned her own spirit to fuel its ancient magic. Every movement was a struggle against a deep, soul-level weariness, yet the path was clear. She looked up at the sheer cliff face, a near vertical wall of ice and rock that separated her from the high ledge where the waterfall began. Or ended. Her arms trembled at the very thought of the climb. Her physical strength was gone, eroded by the dream and the mountain's relentless cold. She had only one choice left. Closing her fingers tightly around the crystal shard in her pouch, she did not simply draw on its warmth. She focused her will, asking it to share its vitality, to lend her its ancient strength. A surge of energy, bright and sharp, flared up her arm. It was not a gentle warmth and amour, but a jolting current that hardened her resolve and made her fingers feel like iron. She began to climb, her hands and feet finding holds in the ice that should not have supported her weight. Each time, she channeled the shard's power to secure a perilous grip or to leap a small gap. A visible pulse of golden light would flash from her hand, a brilliant signal against the stark white mountain. And each pulse was an answer to a new and terrifying sensation, a cold, predatory magic that began to sweep across the slopes like a searching lighthouse beam. It was hunting for the source of the energy she was recklessly expending. The higher she climbed, the more exposed she felt, a lone firefly signaling its location to a vast, unseen predator. With one final, draining pull on the shard's power, she hauled herself over the lip of the ledge. She lay there, panting, her body trembling with exhaustion and spent magic. Before her, the air thrummed with a low, powerful hum, and there it was, the impossible made real. A torrent of water, glowing with a soft, internal blue light, rushed upward from a pool at the base of the cliff, cascading toward the clouds to form a liquid curtain. And through that shimmering, inverted veil, she could just make out the dark, yawning entrance to the dragon's lair. The upward waterfall parted for her like a liquid curtain, its cool touch sending a ripple of pure energy across her skin. Every ache from the climb, every shred of exhaustion, simply melted away, replaced by a profound and steadying calm. She stood at the threshold of a cavern, bathed in a gentle, ethereal light. Glowing moss cast soft blue patterns on the walls, while clusters of embedded crystals pulsed with a slow, golden rhythm. The air was warm, carrying the clean scent of a storm and the deep, solid smell of age-old stone. It should have felt like a sanctuary, but the silence was a complex, living thing. The labyrinth of tunnels ahead swallowed all noise, twisting the faint drip of water and the scuff of her own boots into distorted, overlapping echoes. It was impossible to tell if the soft steps she thought she heard were her own, or those of another, moving just out of sight in a parallel passage. From the deep darkness ahead, a faint, melodic hum drifted toward her, a thread of sound that seemed to weave through the stone itself. It felt like an invitation, a song of guidance. Pushing aside her unease, Alara chose to follow it, letting the resonant melody pull her deeper into the mountain's heart. The humming grew clearer with every step, resolving into a low, thrumming lullaby that vibrated in her bones. It was a dragon's song, a sound of immense power held in perfect, patient rest. Yet with each note, the feeling of being watched intensified. She could not see them, but she sensed ancient, vigilant presences in the shadows, their attention fixed upon her, weighing the intent behind every footfall. The tunnel curved one last time and then opened without warning, revealing a chamber so vast its ceiling was lost in darkness. And there, in the center of that immense space, was the source of the song. Pyroth, the great dragon of cooled embers, lay coiled in a perfect circle around a central plinth. Upon it rested the first dragon Heartstone, a crystal of such intense, vibrant light that it painted the entire cavern in shifting hues of amber and gold. Alara's breath stilled in her chest as she took a slow, deliberate step forward into the cavern's heart. She kept her movements gentle, her posture open and unthreatening as she approached the great worm. With a reverence learned from countless hours studying the ancient scrolls, she bowed deeply from the waist, a formal greeting of old. "Honored guardian," she whispered, her voice a soft echo in the vast space. "I come seeking only understanding, not to take what is not mine." From her pouch, she carefully withdrew the glowing crystal shard, holding it forth in her open palm like an offering. For a long moment, there was only the deep, rhythmic sound of the dragon's breathing. Then, one immense eyelid slid open, revealing an eye that held the shifting colors of molten stone and the patience of ages. A low, resonant rumble echoed through the chamber, not a threat, but a profound and weary acknowledgement. "You carry a fragment of the old song, little keeper." A voice spoke directly into her mind, rich and layered like stone grinding deep beneath the earth. But the melody fades. A shadow, formless and hungry, leeches the light from the heartstones. It is this drain that weakens my kind, that silences our magic and pushes us into dreamless sleep. The great dragon's sadness was a tangible weight in the air, and Alara understood the true stakes. Her world's fading magic was not a slow, natural decline, but a theft. The shadow sought to unmake the harmony of creation itself. "My knowledge is my only weapon, and my courage is all I have to give," Alara said, her voice gaining strength with her conviction. "Please let me help, guide me, and I will do whatever I can to restore the song." Pyroth's massive head shifted, a gesture of solemn acceptance. "Your spirit is a bright spark in the growing dimness," he replied. "I will share what I know, but know this, little keeper. The other heartstones are hidden in places where memory has frayed, and guardians have grown solitary or fearful. Not all will listen to reason as I have. Some protect their charge with tooth and claw, their trust eroded by the very silence you seek to fill." The dragon then shifted one great foreleg, and from the protective circle of his own body, he nudged a single obsidian scale that gleamed with a captured inner fire. It was warm to the touch, humming with a familiar, comforting energy as Alara carefully picked it up. "This scale holds a resonance of the next stone song," he explained. "It will guide you when the path is lost. You must journey to the Sunken city, where the second Heartstone sleeps beneath silent waters, waiting for a light to rekindle its glow." The obsidian scale felt like a sliver of a living star as it settled into her palm. Its warmth was not a surface heat, but a deep, resonant energy that seeped into her bones, a sudden and profound understanding blooming in her mind. The very stones around her began to whisper, their ancient memories speaking not in words, but in impressions of pressure, time, and deep, geological patience. The gift was more than a compass. It was a conversation with the world itself, a firm, undeniable pull now oriented her entire being toward the distant coast, a call from the silent depths of the sunken city. That pull led her to the edge of the Serpent's Strait, a churning expanse of water where the waves clawed at jagged rocks and the air tasted of salt and danger. The fisherfolk who made their home there were a hardened, pragmatic people, their faces etched by wind and loss. They spoke in low tones of ships that never returned, of currents that defied all navigation, and of shapes seen moving in the deep. When Alara approached them, offering to mend their torn nets with a whispered word and a touch of her glowing hand, their gratitude was tempered by a deep-seated suspicion. An elder named Kale, his eyes narrowed, watched her every move. The strange storms that had been ravaging their waters, he muttered to the others, always seemed to follow the arrival of outsiders who wielded magic. Yet the promise of a voyage to the ancient ruins, a place they considered cursed, was a risk they were willing to take for the payment she offered. Their vessel was a stout, single-sailed craft, built for endurance over speed. As they pushed off from the shore, a thick, cold fog rolled in, muffling the world and clinging to Alara's cloak with a damp grip. It was then that the gifted scale on her palm flared with a soft, persistent heat, its glow pushing back against the deep, penetrating chill of the ocean air, creating a small sphere of comfort around her. Out in the heart of the strait, the water turned an unnerving shade of indigo. Then the lights appeared. Luminous shapes, ethereal and vast, began to glide beneath their hull, weaving intricate patterns of blue and green in the dark water. They were beautiful, hypnotic, but the fisherfolk gripped the rails, their knuckles white. They called them the drowned lanterns, spirits of the deep that could lead a willing sailor to forgotten treasure, or an unwary one onto the sharp teeth of the reefs. Alara, her hand pressed against the ship's wooden rail, listened to the whisper of the water-logged timber. It spoke of a great and sudden sinking, of a city that had not fallen slowly, but had been pulled down in a single, terrible night. The luminous guides were not leading them toward a trap, but tracing the old processional roads of the city below, a ghostly map of a lost world. She met Kale's wary gaze across the deck. "We are not being led to our doom," she said, her voice steady with a certainty she borrowed from the stone. "We are being shown the way home." The sea's fury broke without warning. One moment, they were sailing through a ghostly calm, and the next a squall descended, whipping the indigo water into a chaos of frothing peaks and treacherous troughs. The small boat groaned, its timbers protesting as waves crashed over the bow, threatening to pull them all into the churning dark. Alara's hand closed around the obsidian scale, its familiar warmth a stark contrast to the biting spray. She did not command it, but instead poured her own desperate hope into it, a silent plea for shelter. The scale flared, its light not blinding but deep, a resonant hum that pulsed outward from her palm. The raging water immediately around their vessel stilled, the waves smoothing into an impossible, glassy circle of safety, while the storm continued to roar just beyond its invisible boundary. From the turbulent depths just outside their calm pocket, immense shapes emerged. The sea serpents, their bodies longer than the boat itself, rose from the abyss. But they did not attack. Instead, they swam in slow, curious circles around the edge of the magical barrier, their bioluminescent patterns shifting from agitated flashes to soft, pulsing swirls of blue and green. They were listening to the scale's song, their great heads tilting as they matched their graceful movements to its resonant hum, escorting the vessel through the tempest. A sharp division fractured the crew's unity. Some of the fisherfolk fell to their knees, their faces filled with a desperate awe, seeing Alara as a sea-sent savior. But Kale, the elder, gripped the mast, his expression grim. That kind of power does not go unnoticed, he warned the others. You calm one patch of ocean, and you draw the eye of every deeper, hungrier thing that calls these waters home. His fear was a palpable force on the deck. Alara looked from Kale's worried face to the serene, glowing serpents gliding beside them. The scale in her hand pulsed with a gentle, inviting warmth, a clear and trusting call from the creatures of the deep. The fisherfolk's safety was temporary, a bubble in a storm. The true path lay below. Making a choice that felt both terrifying and inevitable, she met Kale's gaze for a brief moment, a silent acknowledgement of his warning, and then she climbed onto the gunwale. With the dragon scale held tight, she dove into the cold, dark water. The world plunged into a silent, weightless gloom. The storm's roar vanished, replaced by a pressure that immediately sought to crush the air from her lungs. But the scale responded, its warmth spreading through her body in a protective cocoon. A single, sustaining breath filled her, not from her own lungs, but from the magic itself, and the crushing weight of the deep became a firm, manageable embrace. She was a tiny spark in an immense darkness, her only light the soft glow from her hand, and the beautiful, shifting patterns of the serpents as they circled her. They did not lead her downward, but forward, their sinuous bodies weaving a path through the vast, open water. They guided her toward a structure that materialized from the abyssal shadows, a sight that stole what little breath she had left. It was a colossal archway, so immense it could have framed a mountain, its stonework now thick with forests of gently swaying algae and encrusted with the pale, silent life of the deep. This was the gateway, the entrance to the sunken city, and as she drifted closer, a new presence stirred from the silt and shadow beside the monumental gate. A guardian, ancient and patient, was waiting for her there. The immense stone archway loomed before her, a gateway to a world lost to time. As Alara swam through its colossal opening, the obsidian scale in her hand flared with a brilliant golden light. A deep, resonant hum vibrated through the water, shaking the very foundations of the sunken city. Ancient mechanisms, silent for centuries, groaned back to life. Before her, a section of the seabed shifted, and a powerful current began to pull, not inward, but outward, forcibly draining the water from a wide, pearlescent tunnel that led into the heart of the ruins. She was swept inside, the water receding around her until her feet found solid, dry ground. She stood, dripping and breathless, in a miraculous pocket of air, a preserved bubble within the drowned city. All around her, structures carved from living coral and mother of pearl gleamed with their own soft, internal luminescence, casting a dreamlike glow on wide avenues and silent plazas. The beauty was breathtaking, a ghostly echo of a vibrant past. Her path forward, however, was immediately blocked. A creature of immense size and ancient bearing stirred from its rest beside the tunnel entrance. It was a turtle, its shell a vast, dark dome, inscribed with intricate, glowing constellations that mapped unfamiliar stars. It moved with a slow, deliberate grace, placing itself squarely before her, its deep, knowing eyes regarding her with a patience that felt as deep as the ocean itself. It did not speak with words, but a question formed directly in her mind, a riddle of pure thought. What binds the sky to the sea, yet is held by neither? What is shared by the dragon's fire and the deepest trench, the constant that gives both their breath? Alara's heart hammered, not from fear, but from recognition. She closed her eyes, reaching back into the countless hours spent with the dragon lore scrolls. The answer was not a single word, but a concept of perfect equilibrium. Balance, she replied, her voice a whisper in the strange, still air. The pressure of the sky upon the waves, the heat of the dragon's heart, meeting the cool of the abyss. It is the eternal balance that allows all things to exist in harmony. The great turtle lowered its head in a slow, profound nod, the star maps on its shell shimmering with approval. A deep, resonant chime echoed through the air-filled chamber, and from somewhere deep within the city, a corresponding light pulsed, growing noticeably brighter. The second Heartstone had acknowledged her, but the victory was fleeting. The same chime that awakened the stone also triggered the city's ancient defenses. A deep, shuddering groan ran through the coral walls, and from high above, a sudden cascade of water began to trickle, then pour through fissures in the ceiling. The guardian turtle shifted its great weight, its mind voice urgent now. The Heartstone lies in the central spire, where the coral blooms like a frozen fountain. You must hurry, little scholar. The sea always reclaims its own. The walls shuddered again as a torrent of cold salt water crashed down into the plaza, the dry ground already beginning to flood around her ankles. Hope, the word left her lips, not as a guess, but as a truth recovered from the forgotten songs of the dragon lore. It was the dragon's gift, the invisible thread connecting the boundless sky to the unfathomable sea, a force that belonged to both and was owned by neither. The great turtle guardian bowed its head, the constellations on its shell blazing with a sudden, brilliant light. A deep, resonant chime echoed through the trembling chamber, and in response, a path of luminous, pearlescent shells embedded in the coral floor ignited one by one, creating a ribbon of light that cut through the chaos. The encroaching water seemed to hesitate, held back by an unseen barrier along the glowing path, granting her a fleeting corridor of safety. She ran, her feet splashing through the shallow water, already covering the ancient avenue, following the shells as they led her directly into the heart of the central spire. The chamber within was a breathtaking sight, a dome of living coral that pulsed with soft, internal colors. And there, resting on a pedestal of woven sea stone, was the second Heartstone. It was a sphere of swirling aquamarine and silver, but its light was faint, flickering weakly like a guttering candle. The chamber groaned around her, and a new crack appeared high in the dome, releasing a powerful jet of water that crashed onto the floor. She had no time for reverence. Wading forward, Alara did not simply grab the stone. Instinct, or perhaps the memory of the scrolls, guided her hand. She pressed the obsidian dragon scale from Pyroth directly against the fading Heartstone. A connection snapped into place, a circuit of ancient magic. She poured her own will into that connection, not to take, but to give, to offer her own hope as a spark to rekindle its dormant fire. A surge of energy, bright and pure, flared from the point of contact. The Heartstone erupted with light, its glow shifting from a weak flicker to a steady, radiant pulse that filled the chamber with a brilliant blue-white luminescence. The ritual had worked. strengthening the stone against the shadow that sought to drain it, but the effort cost her dearly. A wave of profound exhaustion washed over her, so deep her knees buckled, and the water, no longer held at bay, was now rising rapidly, swirling around her waist. The city was determined to reclaim its solitude. As the cold sea tugged at her, threatening to pull her under, the great turtle guardian appeared at the chamber's archway. It did not enter, but instead gave a powerful sweep of one immense flipper. The water around her shifted, forming a gentle but insistent current that lifted her and carried her back, away from the spire, through the crumbling plazas, and out through the monumental archway. She was swept upward, a leaf caught in a benevolent torrent, the renewed light of the Heartstone, a fading star below her as she raced toward the distant surface and the promise of the floating gardens. The world dissolved into a roar of rushing water and a final, gasping breath of air. Alara broke the surface not into the storm she had left, but into a realm of impossible tranquility. The current deposited her gently onto the soft, mossy bank of a small, floating island, its earth humming with a low, vibrant energy. All around her, a chain of these verdant land masses drifted in the quiet sky, each one a tapestry of lush, magical flora, where flowers pulsed with soft light and leaves shimmered with dew that tasted of honey. She lay there for a long moment, soaked and utterly spent, her body a mere echo of the ordeal below. Yet from her pouch, a new sensation bloomed. The first Heartstone's warm, steady pulse, now harmonized with the second stone's cool, flowing rhythm, a quiet duet of restored magic. Where their combined energy spilled from the leather pouch, the moss beneath her glowed, a richer green, and a cluster of nearby night-blooming flowers unfurled their petals in a brilliant, sudden burst of color. This beautiful reaction did not go unnoticed. From the dense, shimmering foliage, figures emerged. They were the verdant wardens, beings woven from living wood and supple vine, their faces like carved bark, and their eyes the color of deep forest shade. They moved with a silent, rustling grace, encircling her without a sound. Their suspicion was a tangible pressure in the air, and the vines that draped from their limbs subtly tightened, poised to snare an intruder. Alara knew a single sudden move could mean being bound forever. Pushing past her exhaustion, she slowly, deliberately sat up. She kept her movements gentle, her gaze lowered, as she reached for the flowers that had just bloomed beside her. Carefully plucking the most vibrant blossom, its petals radiating the combined gold and blue light of the Heartstones, she extended it in her open palm. It was not a claim of ownership, but an offering of shared purpose, a proof that her magic sought to nurture, not to dominate. The lead warden tilted its head, a soft creaking sound accompanying the movement. A slender, root-like finger reached out and gently took the glowing flower. As it did, the blossom's light transferred, tracing delicate, luminous patterns up the warden's arm. The tension in the clearing softened, the vines relaxed, and the wardens exchanged a series of soft clicks and rustles that felt like a conversation. They gestured for her to follow, leading her along a path of glowing mushrooms that wound toward the heart of the largest island. There, in a grove of ancient, singing trees, she was brought before their elder. This being was immense, its form a gnarled and ancient tree, its face wise and weathered. Its voice was the sound of leaves dancing in a gentle wind. "You carry the old songs within you, little river child," it whispered, but you also carry a warning. A shadow creeps across our home. The elder explained that a gray blight was slowly consuming the islands, a creeping decay that drained the color and life from their magical flora, leaving behind brittle, silent husks. This was no natural illness, but the same insidious force that was leeching the magic from the dragons and the Heartstones. The shadow sought to unmake all living magic, and the floating gardens were a vital bastion of that energy. The next Heartstone, the elder revealed, was the source of the island's very ability to float, hidden within their most sacred grove. But that grove was now on the front line, besieged by the advancing decay. The wardens could hold the blight at bay for a time with their songs of growth, but they could not stop it. To reach the stone, Alara would have to walk directly into the withering silence. The sacred grove was a landscape of muted sorrow. Where flowers should have pulsed with vibrant light, they now hung as brittle, gray husks. The air, usually thick with the scent of blooming magic, was stale and silent. Alara stepped carefully, each footfall on the crackling, colorless leaves a small echo of loss. She had to act. Kneeling on the parched soil, she placed her hands flat upon the ground and reached for the Heartstones in her pouch. Drawing on their combined energy, she visualized the grove as it was meant to be, a symphony of life and color. A wave of warm, golden light, edged with the cool blue of the sea, flowed from her palms and into the earth. For a moment, it worked. A circle of rich, green moss spread around her knees, and a nearby sapling shivered, its gray bark peeling away to reveal healthy brown wood beneath. New leaves, tender and bright, unfurled toward the sky, but the blight was a living hunger. As her healing light advanced, the gray decay fought back, creeping in from the edges of her influence. Where her focus wavered for even a second, the vibrant green would brown and wither once more, the blight regrowing faster than she could push it back. It was a battle of wills, and she was losing. Then the shadows in the grove deepened, coiling into tangible form. Sinister, vine-like tendrils of pure darkness lashed out from the corrupted trees, not at her, but at the pouch holding the Heartstones. They moved with a chilling intelligence, seeking to steal the very source of her power. Alara stumbled backward, clutching the pouch to her chest, forced to split her attention between defending herself and continuing the healing. A tendril wrapped around her ankle, its touch like ice, pulling her off balance. She could not fight and heal at the same time. In a moment of desperate clarity, she understood that a slow, careful effort would fail. The grove needed a single, purifying shock of light. With a defiant cry, she drew both Heartstones from their pouch and pressed them together. She asked them not to combine their power, but to merge it, to become one overwhelming force for a single, brilliant moment. The result was not a simple glow, but a silent, expanding sphere of pure, white radiance. It washed over the grove, and the shadowy tendrils recoiled with a soundless shriek, dissolving into nothingness. The gray blight shattered and retreated from the trees like a shattered shell, leaving clean, healthy bark in its wake. Colors returned in a breathtaking rush, and the grove hummed back to life. The burst of light faded, and the cost became immediately clear. The two Heartstones in her hands were now dim, their light faint and weary. A deep, physical weakness settled into her bones, as if the merging had drawn directly from her own life force. And in the sudden, profound silence that followed, she felt a cold, focused attention lock onto her location from somewhere far away. The shadow now knew exactly where she was. But her sacrifice had revealed the prize. There, in the center of the rejuvenated grove, the bark of the most ancient tree split open. Nestled within its heart, pulsing with a soft, verdant green light, was the third dragon Heartstone. As she carefully retrieved it, the verdant wardens emerged from the now thriving foliage, their forms no longer wary, but filled with a solemn gratitude. Without a word, their elder pointed toward the island's edge, where the air itself shimmered with a gathering energy. A hidden glide path of concentrated wind awaited her, a magical current that would carry her to the next trial, high up on the treacherous, cloud-shrouded peaks, known as the Spires of Solitude. The glide path wind felt like a solid river of air beneath her feet. She stepped from the mossy edge of the island into its unwavering current, and it lifted her with a gentle, inexorable pull, carrying her upward through layers of cool, misty cloud. As she ascended, the 3 heartstones in her pouch began to hum in unison, their faint glows brightening as they drank in the pure, high-altitude magic swirling around them. It was a moment of breathtaking peace, a silent journey above the world. But peace, she was learning, was always a temporary gift. From the corners of her vision, dark shapes coalesced out of the cloud banks. They were not solid, but creatures woven from shifting smoke and shadow, with wings like tattered cloaks and eyes that were pinpricks of cold malice. They swarmed around her, their silent forms diving and screeching, not with sound, but with a psychic pressure that made her head pound. Their target was clear, their smoky claws reaching for the pouch at her side. Thinking quickly, Alara closed her hand around the obsidian dragon's scale. She did not command the wind, but spoke to it, her mind forming a plea for sanctuary. Great breath of the sky, please, shield me from these hunters. The scale grew warm, and the wind, which had been a passive road, suddenly became a sentient ally. It curled around her in a protective vortex, a transparent wall of rushing air that sent the smoke creatures tumbling away, their forms scattering like ash in a gale. The immediate threat was gone, but the wind's fierce effort came at a cost. The stable glide path shuddered and dissolved, its magical structure strained by the sudden, forceful maneuver. The solid river of air vanished from beneath her, and Alara felt a sickening lurch in her stomach as she began to fall. The world rushed up to meet her, a blur of green and gray. She clutched the heartstones to her chest, their combined light flaring in a final, desperate pulse that softened her descent just enough. She landed not with a crash, but in a gentle, rolling tumble onto a soft bed of resilient, silver grass. The air left her lungs in a soft whoosh, and for a moment, she just lay there, staring up at the distant, mocking clouds. As her breathing steadied, a new sensation reached her. It was not a sound heard with her ears, but a vibration felt through the earth, a low, crystalline hum that resonated deep in her bones. She pushed herself up and looked around. She had fallen into a secluded valley, and it was alive with music. All around her, formations of naturally occurring crystal grew from the soil like strange, beautiful flowers, and as a soft breeze moved through them, they emitted harmonious, ringing notes. This was the valley of singing crystals, and somewhere within its resonant heart, the next heartstone was waiting to be found. Every step Alara took sent a new ripple of music through the air. The crystalline flowers chimed in perfect, harmonious notes, their vibrations resonating with the 3 heartstones in her pouch, which now glowed with a steady, synchronized light. This resonance built around her, forming an invisible shield of pure sound that hummed with protective energy. For a few precious moments, she was safe, enveloped in a sanctuary of melody. Then the shadow struck back, a discordant shriek, a vibration of pure malice, tore through the valley's song. The beautiful chimes twisted into painful, jarring noises, and hairline fractures spiderwebbed across the smaller crystal formations. The protective shield of sound wavered, and the shadow's oppressive presence pressed in, seeking to shatter both the crystals and her will. She had to answer the shadow's noise with a deeper truth. Closing her eyes against the cacophony, Ilara reached for the memory of Pyroth's dream. She began to hum the low, thrumming dragon lullaby, the ancient song of rest and power. At first, her solitary voice was a tiny spark against the overwhelming dissonance, but then she channeled the combined energy of the Heartstones, using them not as a weapon, but as an amplifier for her song. The humble hum swelled into a resonant wave of pure harmony that rolled through the valley. Where her song touched, the crystals stopped cracking. Their painful shrieks softened, then transformed, joining her melody until the entire valley was once again a unified choir. Her restorative song called to what was hidden, the largest crystal formation in the center of the valley, a spire of pure amethyst, began to pulse in time with the lullaby. Its surface shimmered, and from its heart, the fourth Heartstone emerged, drifting gently into her waiting hand. It was cool and smooth, humming with the deep, foundational note of the earth itself. The shadow, thwarted and furious, retaliated with its last vestige of strength. Instead of another sonic attack, it sent a violent tremor through the very bedrock of the valley. The ground shook violently, and the singing crystals wailed in alarm. But as the earth trembled, the great amethyst spire shifted on its base, grinding against the stone floor to reveal a dark, previously hidden passage, leading down into the deep, cool darkness below. The passage beneath the crystal spire led her down into a deep, resonant darkness. The air grew warm and thick, carrying the faint, metallic scent of ozone and ancient heat. Soon, the rough-hewn tunnel opened into a cavern of impossible scale, its ceiling lost in shadow. Here, rivers of molten star metal flowed in glowing, silver-blue rivulets, casting shifting patterns of light across immense, dormant anvils and tools large enough for giants. This was the ancient forge, a place spoken of only in whispers within the oldest scrolls. The moment she stepped onto the main floor, the 4 Heartstones in her pouch flared in unison, their light so brilliant it pierced the gloom. In response, the forge itself awoke. The star metal rivers blazed with renewed intensity, and all around her, the air shimmered with translucent, ghostly forms. Echoes of the master smiths, their faces stern and their hands calloused from a forgotten age, materialized, observing her with a deep, silent curiosity. But the forge's reawakening also stirred a darker presence. From a shadowed alcove, a massive construct of animated rock and metal lurched into motion. It was a forge guardian, its body a patchwork of granite and obsidian, but one of its crystal eyes now pulsed with a sickly, violet light. The shadow had claimed it. It moved toward her with a grinding, relentless purpose, its single corrupted eye fixed on the pouch at her hip. Her heart hammered, but a fight was impossible. The construct was a force of the earth itself. Her eyes darted to the ghostly smiths, then to the forge's central crucible, a massive bowl of blackened crystal, fed directly by the largest rivulet of molten star metal. The scrolls had spoken of purification, of fire that could burn away impurity. It was a terrible risk. She ran, not away from the construct, but toward the crucible. As the Guardian's heavy footfalls shook the ground behind her, she poured all 4 Heartstones into the blazing vessel. They vanished into the liquid light. She did not command the forge. Instead, she offered her own spirit as a guide, placing her hands on the crucible's rim and pouring her focus, her hope, and her unwavering intent into the fire. She asked the ancient star metal to cleanse the stones, to burn away the shadows, clinging influence, and restore their primal song. The forge roared in response. The molten star metal flared white-hot, and the Heartstones within became 4 swirling points of incandescent energy. The process was excruciating. To hold her focus was to feel the shadow's resistance, a cold, greasy presence fighting against the purifying flames. One slip, one moment of doubt or fear, and the stones would not be strengthened, but shattered into useless slag. The construct's metal fist slammed into the ground just beside her, the impact nearly breaking her concentration. She could feel its hot, corrupted breath on her neck, but she held fast, her entire being a single, clear note of purpose in the roaring chaos. Then, as suddenly as it began, the turmoil ceased. The star metal calmed, and the 4 Heartstones rose from the crucible, transformed. They were smaller, denser, and their light was no longer just a glow, but a pure, unwavering radiance, their individual songs now woven into a single, perfect chord. The Forge Guardian froze, its raised fist halting mid-strike. The violet corruption in its eye flickered and died, replaced by a soft, golden light. It lowered its arm, the aggression gone from its stance, and gave a deep, respectful bow. The ghostly smiths nodded in unison, their silent approval, a palpable warmth in the air. As one, they raised their translucent hands, pointing not to a tunnel, but to a vast, empty shaft in the cavern wall, where currents of warm air began to gather and swirl. Their message was clear. The path was now open to the last refuge, the place where sky and story met, the floating citadel known as the Sky Palace. The star metal fires roared, their liquid light washing over the Heartstones in a torrent of cleansing heat. Alara did not command the flames, but guided them with her will, a delicate dance of intent, channeled through the dragon scale in her hand. She felt the immense power of the forge as a living thing, a river of creation that could just as easily destroy if her focus wavered for even a second. The stones glowed white-hot within the crucible, and from their surfaces, dark, smoky residues boiled away, hissing as they dissipated into nothingness. When the flames finally receded, the Heartstones floated serenely, transformed. They were smaller, denser, and their light was a pure, unwavering radiance. Their magic now harmonized into a single, perfect chord, too brilliant for the shadow to easily influence or drain. But such a profound purification could not go unnoticed. The very air in the forge grew cold, and from the deepest shadows of the cavern, a figure emerged. It was a being of shifting, liquid darkness, its form refusing to hold a single shape, and its voice was the sound of silence given weight. "You have stolen what was being quietly reclaimed," it whispered, a sound that grated against the soul. "Give them to me, and you may leave this place. Refuse, and this mountain will become your eternal tomb." Alara's heart hammered, but she stood her ground, clutching the purified stones. She would not surrender the restored harmony of her world. As the shadow being lunged, she raised the Heartstones, and their combined light erupted into a solid, shimmering barrier that held the darkness at bay. The being slammed against the wall of radiance, its form sizzling where it touched the pure magic. For a moment it held, but the shadow was powerful, a concentrated force of hunger. It began to press inward, thin tendrils of darkness seeping through tiny fractures in the light, probing for weakness. Her barrier would not last. Her eyes darted around the forge, landing on a massive, unused lever near the central crucible, a part of the ancient emergency mechanisms. It was a desperate gamble. Pouring the last of her energy into maintaining the barrier, she lunged for the lever and threw her weight against it. With a great, grinding shriek of protesting stone, a section of the cavern wall slid open, revealing a vertical shaft filled with a roaring, upward gust of wind. It was an escape route, a forge bellows turned exit. The barrier shattered, the shadow being surged forward as Alara, with the Heartstones held tight, leaped into the powerful current. The wind caught her, hurling her upward through the dark shaft in a dizzying rush. The cold, thin air of a great height filled her lungs, and the forge, the shadow, everything was left far below as she was deposited gently onto a narrow, wind-swept ledge. Before her, catching the first light of dawn, a breathtaking sight awaited. A floating staircase, each step carved from solid cloud and shimmering with morning light, ascended into the heavens, leading directly to the majestic, elusive spires of the Sky Palace. The cloud staircase felt like solid marble beneath her feet, each step carved from condensed light and morning mist, but the shadow was not so easily left behind. It flowed up the shaft after her, a stain of liquid night against the brilliant dawn, its form shifting into grasping tendrils of absolute void that chilled the very air around them, drawing the warmth from her skin. Alara did not run. She planted her feet and raised the Heartstones, their unified light blazing forth not as a weapon, but as a foundation. The radiant energy poured into the clouds under her feet, transmuting the unstable mist into a wide, solid path of gleaming alabaster that stretched upward toward the palace spires. The shadow, however, found no purchase on this constructed bridge, its form slipping and churning on the intangible vapor at the path's edges. Yet it had other weapons. The air around her shimmered, and suddenly she was surrounded by visions of her own failure. She saw the great dragon Pyroth turning to cold, gray stone, his fiery heart extinguished. She saw the libraries of Ethelgard crumbling into dust, their scrolls of knowledge lost forever, and the whispering woods falling into a permanent, silent decay. A profound despair, cold and heavy, threatened to crush her spirit. Her resolve wavered, the light of the Heartstones flickering in response. Then she heard Pyroth's voice in her memory, a low rumble of ancient wisdom. "You carry the old songs within you, little keeper," and she remembered the forest guardian's bow, the sea serpent's guiding light, the crystal valley's restored song. These were not illusions, they were truths she had lived. Closing her eyes against the false visions, she spoke aloud, her voice clear and steady against the howling wind. "I believe in restoration," she declared. "I believe in the harmony we shared, and I will see it restored." The simple, powerful affirmation acted like a key. The shadow's mental grip shattered, and the Heartstones flared with a triumphant, purifying light that burned the terrifying illusions into wisps of harmless cloud. Enraged, the shadow gathered its remaining power, no longer trying to deceive, but to destroy. It summoned a furious gale, a storm of its own making that tore at the very substance of her magical staircase. The beautiful alabaster path began to dissolve back into mist behind her, the solid steps turning to treacherous vapor under her heels. With the storm raging and the path disintegrating, Alara made a final, desperate choice. She gathered the Heartstones close, took a running start, and leaped from the last stable fragment of cloud into the open air, hurtling toward the distant, gleaming gates of the Sky Palace. As she flew, the great gates themselves began to glow with a soft, welcoming luminescence. Sensing the approach of the pure magic, she carried and swinging slowly inward to grant her sanctuary. The leap became a glide, the Heartstones cradling her in a cradle of shimmering light that carried her effortlessly over the chasm. Her feet met the pearlescent stone of the Sky Palace's main courtyard, and the great gates sealed behind her with a soft, final chime. An impossible tranquility enveloped her. Astral dragons, their forms woven from shimmering starlight and memory, drifted through the air in a slow, graceful dance. Their passage left trails of gentle, harmonic tones that hung in the warm, still air, a constant, soothing melody that felt like the very heartbeat of the world. Yet this sanctuary was under siege. Beyond the transparent, shimmering dome that encased the palace, the shadow raged. It was a silent, churning sea of darkness, pressing against the magical barrier with a palpable hunger, its formless weight causing the entire structure to groan under the strain. A single, clear thought, formed from the chorus of astral dragons, echoed in her mind. It cannot enter, but its patience is not infinite. It will shatter this refuge to reach you. There was no time for rest or wonder. Alara knew what she had to do. I must perform the restoration ritual, she stated, her voice firm despite the trembling in her hands. I need to find the final Heartstone. The astral forms swirled around her, their harmonic tones shifting to a more urgent, warning cadence. The ritual demands everything, they whispered into her soul. Your strength, your focus, your very spirit must become the conduit. If the shadow breaks your concentration, even for a moment, the backlash will not simply fail. It will shatter the Heartstones into dust, and the last song of the dragons will be silenced for all time. The stakes were absolute, a final, irreversible gamble. Accepting this terrifying truth, Alara nodded. She was ready. The astral dragons then merged their light, forming a single, brilliant pathway that led her through serene, open-air halls and into the very core of the palace, the central spire. The chamber was small and intimate, its ceiling open to a sky filled with unfamiliar, brilliantly shining constellations. In the center of the room, a pool of pure, liquid starlight shimmered, and floating serenely above its surface was the fifth and final dragon Heartstone. It pulsed with a slow, deep light, a quiet, patient power waiting for her to begin. Their shimmering forms swirled closer, and the astral dragons wove a tapestry of memory directly into her mind. She saw the Sky Palace not as a lonely fortress, but as the vibrant heart of a celestial choir, its spires built to amplify the world's foundational song. Their collective strength, a cool and brilliant energy, flowed into her, steadying her trembling hands and calming the frantic rhythm of her heart. With this gift came understanding, the intricate chords of the ancient restoration, melody unfolding within her. It was a song of connection, of roots reaching deep into the earth and branches stretching toward the stars, and she knew she was its final, fragile instrument. In response, the 5 Heartstones lifted from her grasp, arranging themselves in a perfect, spinning circle around her, their light building from a steady glow to a brilliant, humming corona of power. But the shadow redoubled its fury. A thunderous crack echoed through the spire as a jagged fissure split the pearlescent wall. The floor shuddered violently, and the haunting melody wavered on her lips as she fought for balance. The dissonant roar of the void outside clawed at her concentration, threatening to shatter the delicate harmony before it could even begin. Closing her eyes against the chaos, Alara turned inward. She focused on the deep, resonant thrum of Pyroth's lullaby and the image of his great, patient eye. She poured every memory of hope she had gathered, the forest guardian's bow, the sea's gentle current, the crystal's pure chime, into her voice and began to sing. The song was not loud, but it was profound, a resonant wave of pure harmony that flowed out to meet the shadow's cacophony. Where her voice touched the cracked walls, the fractures sealed with threads of golden light, and the shadow recoiled as if burned. But the cost was immediate and terrifying. With every note, she could feel her own vitality flowing out with the music, a profound weariness leaching the strength from her limbs. Her vision blurred at the edges, and the brilliant light of the Heartstones seemed to grow distant. Yet as her physical body weakened, the song itself grew only stronger, fueled by the very essence of her spirit. The palace's light brightened, pushing back the oppressive dark, and the final Heartstone drifted down from its orbit, coming to rest gently in her open palms. Its touch was a catalyst, and the true ritual of restoration ignited, the fate of all magic now balanced on the edge of her fading voice. Her voice became the very thread the world had been missing. Each pure, resonant note she sang wove the light of the 5 Heartstones into a living tapestry, a brilliant fabric of restored magic that expanded from the Sky Palace in a silent, shimmering wave. Far below, the gray blight, consuming the floating gardens, shattered like glass, the color rushing back into the leaves and flowers in a breathtaking cascade of emerald and gold. The tumultuous seas of the serpents straight grew calm and clear, their depths once again humming with a peaceful, ancient song. Deep within his mountain, the great dragon Pyroth stirred, the cool embers of his scales igniting with a soft inner fire as the magic that was his birthright flowed back into his slumbering form. But the shadow, in its final moments, refused to fade quietly. It gathered the very last of its corrosive essence, concentrating into a single, spear-like point of absolute void aimed directly at Alara's heart. It was a weapon designed not just to harm, but to unmake, to silence her song and all it carried forever. There was no time for a shield, no strength left for a counter-spell. In that ultimate moment, her choice was one of pure, instinctual trust. She threw the obsidian dragon scale, Pyroth's gift, and her constant guide, directly into the path of the oncoming darkness. The scale shattered upon impact, but it did not break. Instead, it absorbed the full force of the shadow spear, its fragments transforming into a cloud of brilliant, golden motes that merged with her expanding tapestry of light. This final sacrifice did not weaken the restoration. It completed it. The wave of healing magic blazed with a final, triumphant intensity, and the shadow, with a soundless cry of defeat, dissolved into nothingness, its hunger forever extinguished. The violent shuddering of the Sky Palace ceased, its foundations settling into a profound and eternal calm. The astral dragons, their forms now blazing with renewed brilliance, circled her once before bowing their heads in a deep, universal gesture of gratitude and respect. Elara stood for a single, breathless moment, watching the healed world shimmer below before the last of her strength left her. She did not collapse, but simply drifted into a deep and utterly peaceful sleep, cradled by the light she had returned to the world. A gentle, golden light bathed the world, seeping into every forest, every mountain, and every silent sea. Elara felt it as a profound warmth spreading from her own heart, a deep and resonant hum that was the world breathing a sigh of relief. Across the land, dragons stirred from their long slumber, uncoiling massive forms to stretch wings that had been still for ages, their joyful roars a distant, thunderous music. The 5 Heartstones, now vessels of pure, overflowing magic, lifted from the palace floor and ascended through the open spire. They took their place among the stars, settling into a new, permanent constellation that sparkled with the combined light of earth, sea, and sky, an eternal promise of the bond restored. But as the world celebrated its healing, Elara lay on the cool, pearlescent floor, her body hollowed out and frail. The immense cost of the ritual settled upon her, a deep weariness that made the simple act of lifting her hand feel impossible. Had her sacrifice been so complete that it had stranded her here, in this celestial refuge, forever? A flicker of fear whispered that she might never see the familiar stone arches of Ithilgard again. Yet, looking at the new constellation gleaming above, she made a choice. She would not struggle. She would trust the harmony she had fought so hard to restore. Closing her eyes, she let the soothing melodies of the astral dragons and the gentle pulse of the palace itself lull her into a deep and dreamless sleep. In this state of perfect rest, her selflessness wove her into the very fabric of the dragon lore. She did not dream of her own future, but of others' future guardians with curious minds and brave hearts, who would hear the whisper of the stones and rise to protect the delicate balance, ensuring the song would never fade again. She awakened to the familiar scent of old parchment and polished wood. The first light of dawn was filtering through the high windows of the great library, painting dust motes in shades of rose and gold. She was home. Outside, the air itself seemed to shimmer with a vitality that had been missing for generations, and the distant, harmonious call of a dragon echoed from the newly green hills, a sound of pure, unburdened joy. The morning light felt different on her skin, warmer and more alive than she had ever known it. Elara rose slowly, her body still humming with the echo of the celestial song, and moved to the great library window. Below, the people of Ithilgard were not hiding or hurrying. They stood in the streets and in the market square, their faces tilted upward in rapt wonder. High above, silhouetted against the brilliant blue sky, dragons soared in graceful, peaceful arcs, their flight a silent ballet of restored majesty. There was no fear in the upturned faces below, only a shared, breathless awe. The heavy, rhythmic beat of their powerful wings was not a sound of threat, but a new and comforting music for the world. A soft footfall sounded behind her. She turned to find the head librarian standing there, his usual stern expression replaced by a look of profound humility. He did not speak of exile or forbidden texts. Instead, he bowed his head slightly. "I felt it," he said, his voice quiet with reverence. A great sigh through all the old stones of this library, as if every book finally breathed out a truth they had been holding for centuries. "Your studies were not a rebellion, Alara. They were remembering. We forgot how to listen, and you taught us to hear again." The immediate, overwhelming threat was gone. The shadow dissolved into nothingness. Yet a new kind of weight settled upon Alara's shoulders, not of fear, but of profound responsibility. The harmony she had restored was not a static object to be placed on a shelf and admired. It was a living, breathing equilibrium, a delicate balance that required active and continuous care. She was now a keeper of this new era, a guardian of the fragile peace between earth and sky. How does one protect a song without silencing its individual notes? How does one nurture a balance without controlling its natural sway? Her decision came not as a grand proclamation, but as a quiet, certain resolve. She moved to a writing desk, pulling a fresh piece of parchment toward her. The old ways of hiding knowledge in forbidden scrolls had almost cost the world everything. Secrecy had been a shield, but it had also been a cage. True protection lay not in concealment, but in shared understanding. She would write it all down, the entire journey, the wisdom of the dragons, the language of the stones, the lessons of the guardians. She would create a new testament of dragon lore, open for all to read, so that every curious mind and brave heart could learn its truths and help carry the burden of preservation. Her writings would become the foundation of a new age, the first chapters in a story of renewed cooperation between humans and the ancient, magical world. Yet even as she envisioned this future of shared learning, a part of her remained watchful. The shadow was defeated, but the void from which it had emerged was a part of the cosmos itself. Could such a hunger ever be truly, permanently extinguished, or did it simply retreat to the edges, waiting for a moment of forgetfulness to begin its slow creep back into the world? As she reached for her quill to write the first word, a soft, familiar warmth emanated from the corner of her desk. There, resting beside the ink pot, as if it had always belonged, was a new dragon scale. It was not the obsidian of Pyroth's gift, but a scale of pure, polished gold, and it pulsed with a gentle, comforting rhythm, a silent promise that she was not alone in her vigil. The new dragon scale was small enough to fit in her palm, and it gleamed with a soft inner light that pulsed in perfect time with her own heartbeat. As her fingers closed around it, a gentle hum resonated up her arm, a quiet chord that connected her directly to the 5 Heartstones now shining as a constellation in the daytime sky. This was not a tool of immense power, but one of profound awareness. Through it, she could feel the deep, rhythmic slumber of Pyroth in his mountain, the playful currents of magic in the floating gardens, and the serene watchfulness of the astral dragons above. It was a constant, living report on the health of the world itself. A flutter of uncertainty rose within her. Was she, a scholar who had always sought answers in old texts, truly prepared for a lifetime of feeling the world's every tremor? Could she live a quiet life of study, while also serving as a silent guardian to forces beyond human comprehension? Her decision was both a vow and a comfort. She found a simple silver locket and carefully placed the golden scale inside, securing it around her neck where it rested, a warm and steady weight against her skin. She would not wield this connection, but honor it, using its gentle guidance to teach others to appreciate and protect the delicate dragon magic, not as a force to be controlled, but as a partner to be understood. This link, however, was a two-way thread. While it made her a beacon of hope for those who cherished the restored balance, it also marked her, making her uniquely visible to any lingering shadows or new ambitions that might seek to twist the world's renewed harmony for their own ends. With the locket secure, she returned to her desk, where the morning sun fell in a warm, golden pool across the fresh parchment. Dipping her quill into the ink, she began to write the first page of the new lore. The ink was not merely dark, it was deep, seeming to drink the light from the room before releasing it again as words. As Alara's quill moved across the parchment, each stroke carried the resonance of her journey. The letters themselves began to shimmer with a soft, golden light, a subtle infusion of the Heartstone's magic that transformed her account from a simple record into a living testament. This would be more than a history book. It would be a seed, planted to inspire courage and understanding in generations yet to come. Yet such a profound undertaking could not proceed unchallenged. Whispers began to circulate among the senior archivists, a quiet but persistent opposition from traditionalists who guarded the old, incomplete histories. They questioned her authority, their voices laced with doubt. How could one so young, who had broken their most sacred rules, presume to rewrite the foundation of their knowledge? Instead of meeting their skepticism with argument, Alara chose a path of patient invitation. She gently asked them to read her first completed pages, to see the truth not in her words alone, but in the world outside. She encouraged them to lift their eyes to the skies, where dragons now flew in peaceful arcs, their presence the most powerful validation of her story. Slowly, one by one, the doubters were disarmed. They saw the glowing script, felt the warmth of the magic woven into the narrative, and witnessed the majestic reality that confirmed her tale. Their opposition softened into reluctant curiosity, and then into a humbled acceptance. Her book, once a source of conflict, was soon placed as a cornerstone of the library's main hall, its open pages a beacon for every seeker. Yet Alara understood the deeper stakes. Knowledge alone was a powerful tool, but without the wisdom to wield it gently, it could lead back to the same old arrogance and fear. The book was a beginning, not an end, a guide that must be paired with a compassionate heart. As she laid down her quill upon finishing the first chapter, a gentle, familiar warmth pulsed against her chest from the locket. It was a soft, insistent tug, a silent summons that needed no words. Pyroth was calling. Her heart leaped with a quiet joy, for the call was not one of alarm, but of celebration. He was inviting her to witness a sacred event, the first hatching of a new clutch of dragon eggs in a world restored to harmony. The path to Pyroth's mountain felt different this time, no longer a desperate climb, but a pilgrimage of peace. The cavern welcomed her with a deep, resonant warmth, the air thick with the scent of heated stone, and a new, electric anticipation. In the heart of the chamber, nestled within a bed of glowing embers, several large, beautifully patterned eggs began to rock. A network of fine cracks spread across their shells, and the sound of faint, determined tapping filled the silence. Then, one by one, the shells gave way. tiny, bright-eyed hatchlings tumbled out, their scales still soft and glistening, their curious chirps echoing like tiny bells in the vast space. They moved with a wobbly certainty, their instincts immediately drawing them toward the strong, familiar magic that radiated from Alara. One particularly small hatchling, its scales the color of spun gold, scrambled over the rocky ground and, with an earnest flap of its fragile wings, launched itself onto her shoulder. It nuzzled against her cheek, a tiny, warm weight humming with pure, trusting energy. This immediate, unguarded affection did not go unchallenged. From the darker recesses of the cavern, the older dragons watched. Their massive heads were lowered, and their great, molten eyes held a deep, ancient caution. They remembered a time when human hands had not offered friendship, but had raised weapons, a time of broken promises that had led to the long silence. They did not growl or threaten, but their silent, watchful presence was a wall of living history, a question posed without words. Would this human, for all her good deeds, ultimately prove the same? Alara felt the weight of their gaze, a pressure far heavier than any mountain. She did not reach out to pet the golden hatchling on her shoulder or try to approach the wary elders. Instead, she slowly sat down on the warm stone floor, folding her legs beneath her. She made herself small and still, a quiet figure amidst the new life, her own breathing steady and open. She offered no grand speeches, only her peaceful presence as proof. The trust of the golden hatchling became a quiet argument more powerful than any plea. It chirped happily, preening her hair with its tiny beak, its complete lack of fear, a living lesson to its elders. Slowly, the tense atmosphere in the cavern began to soften. One of the larger dragons, a magnificent creature with scales like ancient jade, let out a soft, rumbling breath, the sound less of suspicion and more of reluctant acceptance. The wall of memory, while not broken, had developed its first crack. This small moment of peace was a beginning, the first thread in a new tapestry of friendship. Yet it came with a profound responsibility. Alara understood that her every action from this day forward would be watched, not just by dragons, but by her own people. She had to become a model, a living example of how humans could interact with this restored magic, with reverence instead of greed, with partnership instead of domination. As the sun began to set, its fading light streaming into the cavern entrance and painting the world outside in brilliant shades of orange and deep purple, Pyroth shifted his great bulk. A low, approving rumble vibrated through the stone beneath her, a sound that felt like the mountain itself was content. The golden hatchling on her shoulder curled into a ball, its tiny body a warm, humming weight against her neck, fast asleep. In that perfect, quiet moment, surrounded by new life and ancient power, Alara knew with absolute certainty that the hatching was not an end, but a glorious and demanding beginning. Her true work, the delicate and endless task of nurturing this fragile trust, was only just starting. The 5 Heartstones pulsed with a final, brilliant light, lifting from the pearlescent floor of the Sky Palace, as if drawn by invisible strings. They rose in a slow, perfect spiral, ascending through the open spire to take their place among the stars. As they settled into a new, permanent constellation, their light did not feel distant or cold, but like a gentle, watchful presence, a promise written in the heavens for all to see. In that luminous moment, Alara understood the profound truth that had eluded the scholars of old. True power was not a treasure to be locked away in a forbidden scroll or a mountain fortress. It was a song, and a song only had meaning when it was shared, its harmony created by many different voices joining together. Her journey had begun with a solitary quest for hidden knowledge, but it ended with the realization that wisdom was found in connection. She was no longer just a curious scholar who had broken the rules. She had become a guardian, a living bridge between the ancient magic of the dragons and the hopeful future of her own people. Her purpose was now to nurture this delicate, newborn balance, to ensure that the skies would always hold the majestic arc of dragon wings, and the cities below would always answer with wonder, not fear. The constellation gleamed, a silent symphony of restored magic, and she knew her greatest work was just beginning. The golden dawn found Alara not in the wilds, but at a large, sunlit table in the heart of the great library, surrounded by a cluster of wide-eyed children. She was the lore keeper of the dragons now, a title she wore not as a crown, but as a comfortable cloak. Her days unfolded in a gentle rhythm of teaching, her voice bringing the glowing runes of her own book to life for a new generation. She taught them how the whispering woods did not whisper to frighten, but to guide those who listened with a quiet heart, and how the sea serpents wove light not as a trap, but as a map for the lost. The children would listen, utterly captivated, their own small hands tracing the shimmering illustrations of the hatchlings she visited on her occasional journeys to Pyroth's mountain. The world itself seemed to breathe in this new era of peace. Magic was no longer a distant legend or a forbidden secret, but a subtle, flourishing part of everyday life. Bakers found their bread rose with a more golden crust on mornings when a dragon's shadow passed over the city, and gardeners noticed their flowers bloomed in more vibrant hues, as if painted with the very light of the Heartstone constellation. The heavy, rhythmic beat of dragon wings overhead was no longer a sound that sent people scurrying indoors, but a comforting music that prompted them to look up with smiles, a daily reminder of the restored harmony between earth and sky. Throughout it all, the small, golden scale rested in its locket against her chest, a constant, warm pulse that connected her to the living tapestry of the world. It was a quiet reassurance that she was never truly alone in her vigil, while a part of her would always remain watchful, aware that balance is a practice and not a permanent state. Her own heart was profoundly light. She had witnessed the dawn of an age where wonder was not chased away by fear, and where wisdom was found not in dusty isolation, but in shared stories and open curiosity. The cozy warmth of dragon lore was no longer locked away in a forbidden scroll, but had become a cherished bedtime story for all to share, a promise to future generations that their world would always be a place of majestic, gentle magic. you.